On today's show, Kevin Porter Jr. contract extension discussions with the Houston Rockets. What are the pros and cons to a KPJ extension for this Rockets team? What can we learn potentially from the Jae'Sean Tate deal as it maybe applies to how the Rockets may be viewing the Kevin Porter Jr. situation? What are the risks associated with extending KPJ this summer rather than waiting until next offseason? All of that and more coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start.
The Houston Rockets select Jalen Green and Jabari Smith Jr.
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal.
Every time I step on that floor, I'm coming.
You're getting somebody who's going to come in with a chip on their shoulder, somebody who's going to come in and compete from day one.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays, host of the State of the Rockets podcast, as well as the founder of ClutchCityControlRoom.com. Be sure to follow along on Twitter at JT Gatlin, and the show, of course, at Locked On Rockets. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Just go to YouTube, search Locked On Rockets, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. For today's show, we're going to focus very, very heavily on KPJ, his contract extension discussions with the Houston Rockets, as first reported by Shams Charania of The Athletic. But a bit of other related Rockets news right here at the top, just to kind of tease our next episode. Bruno Fernando inking a new contract with the Houston Rockets. What does that mean for his role potentially moving forward on this Rockets team? And how does that contract signing impact the rest of the Rockets roster? We're going to talk about that in depth in our next episode, so be on the lookout for that. But let's start with KPJ, because KPJ feels like a bit of a divisive topic, which isn't anything new. KPJ's been a divisive topic amongst Rockets fans for a long time now. But this one especially, the news of a contract extension, because it feels like it's got Rockets fans kind of parked into two separate camps, if you will. And that is the very, very pro KPJ camp of just sign him, extend him, give him all the money, whatever, do all the anti-Chris Mannix, if you will, right? And then there's the other camp, which is the camp that's a bit more apprehensive, a bit more risk averse, maybe, kind of looking at the entirety of KPJ's tenure as a Rocket and just KPJ, his entire tenure as an NBA player, and maybe pumping the brakes a little bit and thinking, hey, this might be a little too early to make this decision. And I find myself in that latter camp of don't extend KPJ this summer. And that I may get some flame. I may get some flack for that. That's totally fine. Right? I don't pretend to be the voice for all Rockets fans. This is just kind of where I come away from it is there are far more risks than benefits to extending KPJ this summer rather than waiting to next summer. And I want to address some of those here right out of the gate. And then as we navigate the rest of this show, segments 2 and 3, kind of take a look at some other things, other factors that could be playing into the Rockets' potential decision to extend him this offseason and how that kind of plays into things. But first off is the off-the-court concerns, right? Off-the-court concerns, locker room concerns, whatever have you, right? I was very vocal immediately after the New Year's Day incident. Granted, I think Christian Wood was the catalyst for that entire incident. I think he is largely the one to blame for how that situation played out. KPJ took part, right? KPJ still made the decision to jump in his car and leave at halftime, despite all the other antics at play from Christian Wood and all the other factors, right? KPJ made that choice, and he's made amends for that, right? He, apologized. He served his 1-game suspension, came back, hit the game winner against Washington, right? Storybook ending. And ever since that moment, KPJ has played much, much better. And that was like about a 39-game sample size. Yeah, 39-game sample size since that moment, since coming back from the New Year's Day incident. And across that back half of the season, KPJ averaged 17.1 points per game, 4.5 boards, 6.4 assists, about a steal a game, 2.7 turnovers in 32 minutes a night, shot 44% from the floor and almost 40% from three. Like, those are respectable numbers. 65% from the free throw line needs to get better, but those are respectable numbers. but it was only over the course of half a season. And we're still, there's still some question marks about, is KPJ capable of being the point guard of the future, right? I don't think he's done enough to quite cement himself guaranteed in that role as the perfect backcourt running mate for Jalen Green. And a big part of what I want to hopefully see this next year is how those two, specifically KPJ and Jalen, play off of Alperen Sengun in the starting lineup. Kind of the whole vision of utilizing Alperen Sengun as the fulcrum for the Houston Rockets offense and kind of mitigating some of the, or not mitigating, but facilitating some of the offense himself and kind of running some sets through him and kind of playmaking by committee between him and Jalen and KPJ and stuff like that, rather than having one guy with the rock in his hands for a majority of the game, which is what the Rockets offense felt like at times last season, with KPJ commanding so much of the attention of the basketball and the opposing team. So one of the risks is the inconsistency, right? He had the 39-game stretch that looked really good, but up until that point, very up and down play from KPJ. So consistency is a factor. The off-the-court stuff is a factor. The other factor at play here is the Rockets may be kind of, betting against themselves, right? Outbidding themselves for KPJ, because right now, if the Rockets re-up on an extension with KPJ, the benefit to doing it now is if you get him on a team-friendly deal, which we'll talk about what a team-friendly deal actually looks like in a moment. But if you get him on a team-friendly deal, then maybe, you save some money, right? Compared to what he may command on the market a year from now as a restricted free agent. Now, because he'll be a restricted free agent, the Rockets are going to be able to match whatever any team decides to throw at KPJ. And my thought process in this is, if KPJ has a phenomenal year, right? If he's poised for a breakout year. So if he has a breakout year, looks incredible, looks, borderline all-star young talent, whatever, and there's a couple teams out there that decide to throw the bag at him with an offer sheet, 20 million plus, the Rockets can match that. And it'd be cool to maybe, get KPJ and save a few $1 million here or there, average annual value on the deal over time. But is that really worth it when you don't know what this next season could hold, right? Maybe you sign him to the extension this summer and he gets complacent, right? You sign him to the deal and then maybe he's like, all right, I got my deal, I got my bag. I don't have to, bust my ass this next season to be the best version of myself. I'm not competing for a contract, all this stuff. So there's a concern there, right? And if KPJ has a fantastic season this next year, right? If they don't extend him this summer, if he has a fantastic year this next year, and if a team like, the Kings, right? Somebody walks up and tries to throw the bag at KPJ, it's because he's worth it. And at that point, I feel like the Rockets would have no qualms about matching him. So to me, it doesn't necessarily make a ton of sense to want to extend KPJ this offseason, because it feels like you're doing yourself a disservice by playing against yourself, right? You're kind of bidding against yourself for KPJ services when there's nobody else in the running, right? The league at large has viewed KPJ as damaged goods for a while. There's a reason the Rockets got him for free, effectively, from the Cleveland Cavaliers, or, whatever, top 55 protected second-round pick, effectively for free. And he's been working incredibly hard to rehabilitate his image. And KPJ, the person, comes across as incredibly genuine. I wish him all of the best. I'm just trying to sit here and factor in all the variables that we have, all the data that we have, and try to figure out if this decision makes the most sense for the Houston Rockets. And right now, I have not been able to convince myself that, yes, extending KPJ is the best possible option right now for the Houston Rockets. So coming up, I do want to talk about what a KPJ extension would actually potentially look like, what a team-friendly deal would look like, and the numbers that, if the Rockets are committed to trying to get an extension done this offseason, what some acceptable numbers would potentially look like, what we can potentially learn from the Jae'Sean Tate contract structure and agreement that the Rockets had there, and as to why they may be looking to take care of the KPJ situation sooner rather than later. We're going to get there after a quick message from our friends over at Built Bar, because when it comes to protein bars, you've got to check out Built Bar. They're the #1 protein bar on the market, and for very good reason. Every single bar is low cal, low sugar, high protein, high fiber. Amazing if you're on a keto diet. Amazing if you're trying to cut back a little bit, maybe lose a little bit of weight. And the flavors they have. I mean, they've got raspberry, strawberry, mint brownie, salted caramel, cookies and cream, coconut brownie chunk. I just go on and on and on with the flavors. Every single bar is coated in 100% delicious chocolate. They're not gritty or chalky like other protein bars on the market. You can check them out. Just go to built.com and use promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your very next order of the best tasting protein bars on the market. Again, that's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Now, there's two other areas of the KPJ contract extension discussion that I want to take a look at. And the first of which is going to be, what does a team-friendly deal even look like for KPJ, right? If the Rockets were to go the route of extending KPJ this summer rather than waiting until next offseason, what does a number look like that the organization could feel confident about, that we as fans of the team could feel confident about moving forward, to where if things were to go south with KPJ, what's a manageable number? So we'll take a look at that and kind of maybe the precedent being set by the Jae'Sean Tate deal and some of the parallels as it relates back to the KPJ situation. I also want to take a look at what a KPJ extension would do to the Rockets' cap flexibility moving forward, because that's a big thing that we focus quite a bit on, is, you know, the summer of 2023 being that big offseason where the Rockets could be poised to make a splash. So we'll take a look at that as well. But starting first with the essence of a team-friendly contract, if you will, for Kevin Porter Jr., let's take a look at what happened with Jae'Sean Tate, right? Because I think there's some significant parallels here. Jae'Sean Tate was a guy that myself and many others thought the Rockets would just pick up his option. We'll figure it out next summer, all that good stuff, right? Instead, they declined his team option. They likely had a handshake, wink, wink, nudge, nudge deal in place, because the Rockets had all the leverage in that situation with a new contract with Jae'Sean Tate, right? That contract could not have been struck had they not agreed to it prior to the Rockets declining that team option. Because if they couldn't come to terms on a contract, then they just pick up the team option. They say, all right, you're on a team option and we'll figure it out next summer, or we'll trade you, right? That's the leverage in the situation if you're the Houston Rockets. So instead of that being the outcome, they decline the team option. They get Jae'Sean Tate on a very team-friendly deal that winds up being a little over 20, or a little under $21 million total value across the deal. First year, $7.1 million. Second year, $6.5 million. And then third year, $7.1 million again. Third and final season is a team option, which, again, super team-friendly deal across the board for Jae'Sean Tate. They'll have his bird rights moving forward, being able to extend an even bigger contract to him further down the line in 2024 or 2025, should they so desire. So a lot of flexibility, a lot of awesome stuff with that contract for Jae'Sean Tate. Now, looking at the situation, right, the Rockets didn't have to do that, right? That was kind of the olive branch, like, hey, we value what you bring to the team. We want to get you under lock and key sooner rather than later, rather than letting you, go to free agency the following season. We're just going to commit this money to you right now. You're a big part of what we're trying to do here. Here you go. And they got him on a great team-friendly deal. KPJ could be in a similar boat, right? Where they're incredibly high on his potential. They love what he brings to the table. They think he's potentially the future, backcourt running mate for Jalen Green for years and years to come. If all of that is the case, then allowing, in entertaining these, contract discussions right now makes some level of sense, rather than, KPJ hitting the open market and, as a restricted free agent, and then the Rockets are, their hands are forced to a team, willing to pay him top dollar, right? If he has a fantastic year, right? Like if KPJ comes out and is just insane this next season, there's going to be teams that are going to line up to throw the bag at KPJ. And then the Rockets are forced to match, and yeah, they still retain his services, but then you're paying premium top dollar amount for KPJ. Whereas if you could get him on a bit of a team-friendly deal right now, then you'll save a little bit of money, and you have that level of extending further confidence to KPJ. The Rockets have already put a lot of confidence in this kid, right? They have, they benched their veteran point guard in John Wall for a year to give KPJ the keys to the Rockets offense. They have, instilled every bit of confidence in him that he is their guy moving forward, that they're, incredibly high on his future. My understanding is that he's been absolutely insane this offseason, that he's been killing it as far as workouts go and what he looks like, putting in a ton of work. So all of those factors at play, maybe it is the best case scenario for them to, extend him this summer rather than letting this thing drag out, having the uncertainty looming next season. And maybe that's something that KPJ could benefit from, having that guarantee, having that commitment from the organization of, hey, you're our guy. Here's your contract. You don't have to worry about this. You're here for the long haul, right? And if they're able to pull something off like what they did with Jae'Sean Tate, where the contract comes in significantly under the market value of what I thought it would, I thought Jae'Sean Tate was going to make anywhere from $8 to $12 million a year. And I thought it was going to be closer to the higher end of that, like somewhere in between 10 to 12, honestly, kind of MLE value range. And they wound up getting him for a fraction of that price. So if KPJ is a similar circumstance, $15 million seems to be the number that a lot of people are throwing around, $15 million a year, average annual value. And what if the Rockets came in like super under that, right? To me, the number that I'd feel like comfortable with right now is about $12 million a year. I'd feel ecstatic. If the Rockets could extend KPJ and get him at $12 million a year for the next 3 or 4 years, then I'm sold, right? And I don't think if you were to put KPJ as a free agent on the market right now, like this offseason right now, I do not think that he could get more than $12 million a year on the market right now. Even if there were teams out there with cap space, right? I don't think there's a team that would throw $15 million plus at KPJ right now at this very moment, given the very small sample size of consistent data that we have for him. And so to me, that's the argument that the Rockets kind of have. That's the leverage that they have is, look, you can bet on yourself, right? KPJ could bet on himself, and he could just, decline any extension, discussions, whatever, roll into next season, bet on himself, try to have a stellar year. And maybe he does. Maybe he looks like a borderline all-star, super incredible young talent, all that. And then there's teams lining up to give him a payday at the end of the season. The Rockets can still match that, right? They can still do that. The flip side of that is maybe he struggles this next season, right? Maybe he doesn't have an insane season. Maybe he doesn't look like the point guard of the future. All these negative things could potentially happen. I'm not saying that I hope that they happen. I'm just saying these are the concerns that KPJ, his agent, his team, his camp have to take into consideration. So how much are they willing to bet on him and how well he can play this next season rather than just taking whatever the Rockets are trying to offer right now? Maybe that offer is somewhere in the $15 million a year range. Maybe it's $15 million, across 4 seasons, $60 million 4 years, something like that. I'd be terrified if that was the contract because, again, worst case scenario with KPJ, you don't want to be saddled with a contract that sizable in the midst of a rebuild. That is how rebuilding teams make big time mistakes, is committing long-term money to somebody that is an uncertainty or has some risks or concerns about them. If they're not a guaranteed lock it in, this is going to be our guy moving forward, then I think you have to consider waiting it out. Consider waiting until next offseason. And if the season works out, if everything's on the up and up and KPJ looks fantastic and looks every bit worth the money that he should be, then you let him hit free agency and you match whatever contract comes his way. Because the other flip side of this is there may not be a team out there willing to throw $20 million a year at KPJ, right? Maybe, what if he comes out and has a season exactly like this prior season where he's doing, 17, 5 and 7, solid numbers, not insane numbers, right? He's not looking like a borderline all-star, but the talent's there. He's consistent all season. What if the best offer he gets is like $13 million, $15 million, right? What if that's the best offer on the table for KPJ a year from now? And if the Rockets outbid themselves before they even get to that point, then they've done themselves a disservice, right? So to me, the only benefit to extending KPJ right now is you save a little bit of money, across the lifetime of the contract if KPJ winds up playing up to his maximum potential this next season. And that's a very big if at this point, right? I don't think that's a guarantee whatsoever, which is why I think the contract extension talks kind of surprised me and many others a little bit as to the fact that the Rockets are entertaining them right now, which again, given what we know about the Jae'Sean Tate situation, it could be that the Rockets have a very, very team-friendly deal in the works on the table, and that's what the discussion looks like right now. And maybe they come out as total winners in this, and they get KPJ for, 10, 12 million a year, something, very team-friendly with maybe a team option somewhere on the back end of the deal, maybe some non-guaranteed money included, that kind of thing. And you could also make it incredibly incentive laden, right? If he becomes an all-star, then he gets like a $1 million bonus or something. You can add some incentives in there to where if KPJ does really hit his true ceiling and maximize his potential, then he's still got some earning to do, right? He's still got some, some flexibility in that contract to make a little bit of extra money. So those are kind of the thoughts there as to what a team-friendly deal would look like for KPJ. I'd be comfortable right now at this very moment, $12 million a year. That's probably the highest amount that I would go for KPJ right at this very moment as far as a contract extension looks like. Anything more than that, it's a little bit too rich for my blood. With that, though, I do want to discuss what a KPJ extension could potentially mean for the Rockets and their cap flexibility moving forward as it relates to summer 2023, which is the big summer that a lot of Rockets fans have kind of painted as the target summer to make a big splash, a big move, that kind of thing. We're going to get there in just one moment. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. We are free and available on all podcast platforms, including YouTube. So go to YouTube, search Locked On Rockets, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Now, as the KPJ potential contract extension relates to the Rockets and their cap flexibility, right? There's the concerns on the surface of, do you extend him? Do you not extend him? The pros, the cons, all that. What does his fit look like with the team moving forward? Everything to do with all that, right? I think one of the other concerns is the cap flexibility moving forward. What does that do to the Rockets' cap space if they extend him? So first off, if they extend KPJ, the extension doesn't kick in until after this next season. That's how an extension works versus inking a brand new contract, right? So this current contract would still run its course through next season where KPJ is still making, a little under $2 million, whatever his rookie scale deal is. And then the extension would then kick in after that at the start of the new NBA fiscal year. So effectively, whatever number the Rockets would potentially come up with for this KPJ extension, whatever that first year value is, that's the cap hit that the Rockets would take summer 2023, the summer where they're projected right now to have enough for 2 max player slots moving forward. And so that's the summer where everybody's like, oh, well, they can make a big splash in free agency, add, 1 or 2 big name free agents or add a big time, all-star and then add a couple role players, that kind of thing, and really like flesh out this Rockets roster with all the young talent and everything. I've had concerns about 2023 being a little bit too early in the process for the Rockets because, again, at that point, Jalen Green's still only got 2 years under his belt. All the current rookies, Jabari, Tari, Ty, they'll only have 1 year under their belt as far as competitiveness. So what about the possibility of the Rockets rolling their cap space to the following summer? And what I mean by that is we see rebuilding teams do this all the time. The Thunder have done a masterclass of this, and that is taking in bad contracts, accepting additional assets for said bad contracts, like, additional draft capital, young prospects, what have you. In this case, I'd be, more inclined to say the draft capital route. But you take back a bad contract, you take back future draft capital, be it some, first round picks, be it some second rounders, whatever you can get your hands on if you're the Rockets. And the contracts that you take back, essentially, you effectively use the cap space that you would have used on signing big-name free agents in summer 2023. You use that cap space instead to facilitate trades for other teams out there. You take back the bad contracts as long as they end in summer 2024. So you effectively roll over that cap space and you take whatever 50 million, 60, 70 million cap room that you would have. You take in a bunch of bad contracts, assuming they only expire in 2024, not longer. You don't want to take back long-term bad money. You're just taking back contracts that expire next summer instead. And then effectively push all that cap space one summer later. The benefits to that would mean, again, another year under the belt of all the young guys, right? Jabari Smith Jr., Tari Eason, Ty Washington, they've instead now of just having their rookie seasons done, they've got 2 years under their belt. Jalen Green will have 3 years under his belt at that point. Alperen Sengun, KPJ gets another year under his belt. All these different factors at play, right? And so if the Rockets are going to opt to extend KPJ right now, that money will eat into their potential cap flexibility for this upcoming summer. So it's not going to be, an insane amount that it eats into it, right? But it's still a noticeable amount rather than the cap hold that would be on KPJ if they just let him roll over to next season and they let him get to free agency a year from now. The cap hold is much, much smaller until a team potentially walks up and throws an offer sheet at KPJ. Because if they throw an offer sheet at KPJ, then that ties up the Rockets cap room as far as what they potentially want to offer. So that is, a potential wrench in the situation. Now, right now, I mean, I do like that opportunity because one of the big name free agents for 2024 free agency is Jaylen Brown. And right now there's a lot of uncertainty about his future with the Boston Celtics, whether or not he's going to be included in a potential trade for Kevin Durant, all these factors at play, right? And if he gets traded for KD, and if he doesn't like it in Brooklyn, if that's not a place where he feels like he can win at the highest level, all that stuff, he's slated to be an unrestricted free agent in summer 2024. And he would absolutely be a guy. If I were the Houston Rockets, I would throw a maximum top dollar money at Jaylen Brown immediately. Like, that would be a guy that would really complete what this Rockets team needs, because you look at their, what is in essence the almost guaranteed starting five of the future, and that's right now KPJ, Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, and Alperen Sengun. And so their hole at this point is at the small forward spot. And whether that small forward spot is occupied by Jae'Sean Tate this season or Eric Gordon or whatever, Jaylen Brown is an insane upgrade to either of those guys. And if you're telling me you could, throw that max contract at Jaylen Brown and then have a core of that starting five with guys like Josh Christopher and Jae'Sean Tate and Tari Eason and Ty Washington coming off the bench for years to come, a group of guys whose their ages all kind of match with each other, all of that kind of, entering into their mid-20s all at the same time. That's an insanely enticing core if you're the Houston Rockets. And so how does that KPJ situation, right? How does extending KPJ now factor into that? Because if you extend him now and you get him on a bit more of a team-friendly deal, then you're able to conserve a bit more of that cap space, even though on the surface you have less room to play with hypothetically, right? You suddenly don't have room for maybe 2 max level contracts next summer. You have a little bit less room to play with. You have more cap space overall, more cap flexibility overall than if you were to make it to the summer and then some team offers KPJ, a $20 million plus contract, and then you have to match that number. Then suddenly you're strapped, right? That's eating up a big portion of your salary cap moving forward. So locking him into an extension now could have positive ramifications further down the line as far as the Rockets' ability to maneuver their cap space and figure out the best possible way to allocate those cap resources, be it, again, taking in bad contracts, accepting additional assets for said bad contracts, and rolling over their cap space one summer later for a guy like Jaylen Brown, if there's nobody on the market in 2023 that they feel really pushes the needle in the right direction or kind of complements the young core the way that they think it does. And again, I think 2023 may be the summer that's jumping the gun a little bit, right? Now, the Rockets don't necessarily have a reason to be bad again in the 2023-2024 season, which is why 2023 makes so much sense as to, hey, make a splash, add a big name, become competent again, like start winning games. That's kind of the year, that 2023 season makes a lot of sense as being the first year where the Rockets need to be on the upswing, because that's when they lose control of their draft picks again by way of the OKC deal. But pushing it back one more year, or at least pushing the cap space back one more year and giving the young core one more year to grow together, coalesce, kind of iron out any issues, any, growing pains, whatever they may have adjusting to the NBA game, giving themselves one more year to do that, and then adding a guy like Jaylen Brown or whoever else is available in 2024 free agency would make a lot of sense. So an interesting option there as it relates to how the Rockets may utilize their cap space moving forward. Not directly related to Kevin Porter Jr., but at least a factor that could be considered as it relates to how the Rockets are going to deploy their cap space and their cap room moving forward. And again, the first domino of that is whether they extend KPJ now or whether they wait until next offseason to extend him. So Do you want to see the Houston Rockets extend KPJ right now? Do you want to see them kind of pump the brakes a little bit and wait and see what he does this next season? Let me know in the comments on YouTube. As always, appreciate you for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcast. That's Apple, Spotify, Google, the Odyssey app, free and available on all platforms. Already mentioned YouTube. Go to YouTube, search Locked On Rockets, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.